What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another score breakdown. This time we're going to be going over a project that just recently came out. I'm super excited to go ahead and show you guys it. I was the composer for the latest spoof animation project called HEROCORPS Episode 3, Deep Genesis. So without further ado, let's just get straight into the cue. Okay, so first things first that I want to go over is just how important it is to make sure that you have a thematic material that you're going to use as an anchor for whatever it is that's going on in screen. In this case, this project is definitely a hero action kind of project. And so my theme had to definitely embody that. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys right now what the sketch was like for that section. And so right there you have the theme being played, or the main motive that's within the theme, right? Right, and so that main motive slash theme is going to be used throughout this entire cue. But let's continue listening. Right, so there's the theme as you heard it just now. And again. Okay, so that is the theme, right? So with that, I'm taking different snippets, different motives, right, throughout that theme, that I'm going to be sprinkling here and there, because this is a theme to represent the main character. The main hero in this case is Boxa, and I wanted this theme to be sprinkled throughout, so that way when we finally do get to hear it in its totality, it somewhat still feels recognizable and like, oh, I recognize this, you know. It doesn't come out of left field. From there, let's go ahead now and listen to my initial idea. Okay, so no judgment here, okay. My initial idea, not always, but a lot of times I record a voice note, which helps me get very, very far in my process of writing. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys what that sounds like. This is just helps me to really figure out how I want things to sound in the end. All right, so here we have it. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Even that counting, right? That's me, so that way I can make sure I'm syncing up with the time code and the pacing of the actual film. But anyway, let's keep going. 6, 7, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so you get the deal, right? I ended up actually shifting quite a bit from this initial idea, but it did help me to understand I guess the structure that I wanted to apply to this, because this initial idea came first, then I actually did the piano sketch just to kind of see how things go. Let's go ahead and now look at the piano sketch. Again, some things did change from the piano sketch, some things stayed the same. Let's go ahead and listen to all of this together. Right there, just so you guys know, this is simply a diminished scale line right here. Super simple. It's just a diminished scale line. So E, G, and then I would say A sharp or B flat rather, sorry. And then it kind of just goes with the diminished scale. Okay. It's really effective whenever you're in an action sequence. I think the diminished scale is it has been used so often within orchestral action Hollywood music that if you do use the diminished scale, whether it's to do a quick passage run to lead you into the next section, or whether you're using it as your main harmonic material, it's going to sound very familiar, and that's already going to be something that you have as an advantage for you as a composer to help you really support what's going on with the visuals, and that would also really impress your director as well, right? So that's just a diminished scale. Then we enter this next section right here. Right, so there we go again. A little bit more what's happening on screen is that at this section, I wanted to give it a break from the constant tension and constant motor, I guess, from the previous section. I wanted to add a little bit more thematic material there. But also what's happening on screen, which I'll show you at the end, is that they are kind of catching themselves in a little bind. There's an action scene happening between the villain, or what we believe is to be the villain, and the actual villains, the people who are running away. And they're running away. The perps are running away, and they get into this place where they're kind of cornered because now they're at a dead end. So that was that section you just heard where they're running into that dead end, and then they realize, holy smokes, there's nothing that could be done. And that's where you heard that little interesting chord. And I'm going to go ahead and play that chord for you again so you guys can hear it. Here we go one more time. So here is that finished chord, and what's happening on screen here is like a zoom out, I guess you would say. It's the camera zooms out and it shows you just how high the wall is, and it shows you that, like, holy smokes, I don't think they're gonna be able to get this far. I don't think they're able to get over this wall. So here's what that chord is really, right? So we have a C minor chord, right? C, D sharp, G, so that's C minor. And then we have a B, D, and a G sharp. Okay, so as you can see that right there, so this is like, really funky kind of chord. Then on top of that again, you have a C sharp, A flat, A sharp, which is a B flat, and then, well, I guess in this case you would say F sharp, A sharp, and a D. So a bunch of these like augmented chords right here. Right, very augmented sound. All right, and it just sounds very dissonant and also suspenseful, right? It gives that suspenseful feeling that you really want when the camera is panned and zooming upwards. Okay, then we kind of get back into the action over here. There goes that theme, right? So it goes A, D, G, F, E flat, right? So dun, 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 dun. Harmonically, it's altered a little bit. It's changed to fit the overall vibe and tone of what's happening. And again, keep in mind, at this point, we don't know that this person is the actual hero. Right now, we're the audience. We're watching it, and from our perspective, from our vantage point, we haven't been introduced to anybody, really. And so, therefore, we see these people running. Yeah, they might be shooting, all that kind of stuff. You can kind of deduce that they're the villains, but at the same time, you're not really sure who this person is either. Like, if the villains are running from them, like, is it Batman? I don't know, right? But no, it's someone better. It's Boxa, right? So that's where we have that, again, echoing of that motive. Again, harmonically it changes a little bit just to fit the overall theme, overall visuals. But yeah, that's what we have going on there. And let's keep going. Again, there we go with that motive, right? Right. So again, I'm always sprinkling this motive throughout as much as I can. So right here, this is when the villains start firing away at Boxa, and a bunch of like just bullets are spraying off his body. They're hitting the walls. They're hitting explosive items around, all kinds of things are happening, and it's supposed to feel very, very chaotic. So that's what's happening here. So finally, after that, we have this B note that's held throughout. And as you can see through my notes, that's eventually going to be a violin tremolo. That's going to be really anchoring and transitioning between the explosion that happens and the first musical instance of Boxer's theme. All right, so let's get into that now. And there you have it right there, right? So there goes that theme. So there's that theme, right? So just really straight to the point. So now we're going to go over the orchestration process for this project. Let's take a look at this. For this project, as you can probably assume, brass and strings are dominating quite a bit. However, I'm a sucker for woodwinds. I love the woodwinds, so I try my best to still use them as best as I can in different ways. In this case, they're being used in a very stereotypical way of ostinato patterns and that kind of thing, but they are sometimes doubling some melodic lines, and even in the beginning I do give the clarinet its own lead. So let's go ahead and listen to just that initial beginning section. Okay, so let's stop right there. So immediately we enter in, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the animatic, and this is something that you would typically get when you're working with animation. You would most likely get an animatic. Depending on how early you come on, you might even get a storyboard. So yeah, so this is the animatic. Here we have right now, it starts off with basically a shot of the overall terrain, the location, right, the setting of where we are. And I didn't want the music to start exactly like the motor to start immediately, because I felt like that shot needed to be given some bit of respect, but I still wanted it to be tense a little bit, and so that's why I used the kind of harmony and chord that I did. And again, as I mentioned before, I gave the clarinet that melody. So let me show you guys what that sounds like again with the visuals. And so again, as you can see, once that step comes in, right, and it steps on that puddle, that's where the action begins. And that's something that's really important when you're composing. You don't want to get ahead of yourself, and more importantly, ahead of the audience. You know, your job most times, unless the director gives you a different vision for you, most times your job is to reinforce what the audience is feeling, and in some cases, get them to feel something that's not happening on screen, right? That's what we call subtext. But in this case, it's really right on the nail. It's on the money, right? The person starts running, we show that happening by a change of music, okay? Okay, so one of the things that you might be wondering is, what are all these instruments? Why are they muted? The vibe that I was going for this cue, for this project, was almost like a old school Arkham, Batman kind of vibe, where this is a very menacing hero. He is a hero, right? Boxer is a hero. However, he's menacing, he's terrifying, because he's even causing the villains to be afraid of him, right? They flee when they hear his name. They flee when they see him coming, like big time, right? And so I felt like, okay, this is like an ode to Batman. Now, as far as the music sonically goes, I was also given a directive from the director to also kind of emphasize some aspects of, more modern scores, especially the African elements, because it's based in Africa. And so I definitely had to make sure that sonically I included lots of African percussion, rhythms, polyrhythms, but still also incorporating that Western orchestral sound that we're so used to hearing in blockbuster Hollywood films like Avengers and other kinds of heroic movies. Now that I mentioned the influence, I want to go ahead and show you guys what's going on in the brass. In the brass section, a lot of the sound, a lot of the instruments are being muted. So I'm going to go show you guys what that sounds like right now. So that's that opening clip, right? Then we have the tuba. There goes that muted trumpet, right? Okay. So underneath all this, there's a motor happening. Right? And you got to have those things, right? This is all things that are helpful when you're making orchestral music, but within a DAW, you have to do things that sound realistic. And so use the different articulations, right? Study them, figure out what they do, when they're best used, when have they been traditionally being used. That's sometimes an indication that you can use them in those same ways too. Obviously, sometimes you got to know when to deviate from tradition. In this case, I have, like I said, those muted trumpets and horns, but then I also have a rip coming through with the horn right here. Right, like that rip, just like it's awesome in my opinion. Okay, so as you can see, it's very sparse because what's actually happening is a lot of the motors happening in the other instruments, which are the woodwinds, the melodic percussion, and the strings. Let's go ahead and listen to that motor. So you got the piano going, and then in the bass of the woodwinds, you have ostinato pattern happening between the bass clarinet and the contrabassoon. They're like going back and forth. Here now we have and again, you can just read my notes literally. You have the double basses and the cello only, really grinding out this triplet kind of action right here. So now more instruments starts to add on. So now we're finally getting the bassoon that comes in. With the strings. Then a harp run. Okay, we'll stop right there. So yes, it really all comes together little by little, piece by piece. And again, in this case, you have to know what's coming on screen. You don't want to give, all your eggs in one basket kind of scenario. You really want to be able to structure your piece in a way that enhances the action on screen throughout a sequence. You don't want to just give it all at once and then now you have nowhere to go. You know what I mean? So that's what's happening there. Then we have a beautiful harp glissando with that diminished scale that I showed you earlier in the piano where it was moving up in the piano sketch. Well, now we have it going actually down with some of the woodwind instruments. I'm going to show you guys that because that just sounds awesome in my opinion. So here you have it with the strings. Okay, so there you have it in the strings. Then we also have that being played in the woodwinds. So I'm going to play that for you. Okay, so now we get back to the second section of this cue where the characters have been kind of ran themselves into a dead end. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys that right now. Okay, we'll stop right there. So again, you heard that little motive echoing right there. And you see when it pans, they're like, holy smokes. Now they realize, oh man, we got nowhere to go, right? So that's what it highlights the angst on the characters' faces, but also what we should be feeling as well. Okay, so now they decide, okay, you know what, since we're at a dead end, we might as well fight this person, right? We might as well fight Boxer. So now they take out their guns, they start shooting. I really like this part because you realize pretty quickly that their efforts are futile because it doesn't work. And I show that in their remarks by having that little xylophone and low piano hit this little lick over here. So I'll play that for you right now. So now the big honcho comes through with his big old gun and his big old self, and he's thinking it's gonna work, and well, you know how that goes. So I really wanted to wait. As you can see, I had time. If I wanted to, I could have brought back in those drums when the guy first started shooting, but I really wanted to wait until Boxer kind of does that Dragon Ball Z, you know, where his energy, you know, appears in front of him, or all around him rather. So that way we can really see a significant change in what's happening on screen, and we can feel that as the audience. Okay, so as you heard it, it kind of slowed down, right? How did I do that? Well, for sure, I did a tempo slowdown, right? Literally within my DAW, I went from 150 and I slowed down to 114. I did this for two reasons. Number one, the explosion happens. I knew that sound effect would kind of cover this tempo kind of decrease. But also, the original theme that I wrote for Boxer is in a slower tempo. So by using that held note, that B, which allows me to just, you know, modulate to the key of E seamlessly, I'm also using that slowdown / sound effect that I know is going to happen because of the explosion to kind of cover up the fact that I'm switching the overall tempo to now a slower tempo for the Boxer theme to now kind of run through. So let's go ahead and listen to that with the strings. I'm gonna go ahead and play that. The strings in the choir really was taking, you know, rain over here, so I'm gonna go ahead and play that right now. And just so you know, going forward, if you ever hear that motive, tippa, 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 then you know Box is coming through, you feel me? Box is on the scene, okay? And so that choir, I just feel like makes everything sound a lot more epic. And when you're talking about heroes and Boxer, you're always gonna have some epicness happening, okay? Let's go over now what's going on with the brass instead. So as you can see, I did have the brass coming in early, but then I realized once I added that choir, there was no need to have the brass come in that soon. It was actually more beneficial arrangement wise to have the brass come in at the last bar or so to give it that last bit of push and energy. So I'm going to show you what that sounds like. Again, it's going to be empty for now, and then you'll hear it later on when the brass fully comes in. Okay, so now those two sections together, sorry, those three sections together, the choir and strings and brass. And so that's really it. And now we get into the main theme of Boxer, at least for this specific sequence, right before we get to the end credits. So let's go over that, section by section. In the woodwinds, we have the ostinato pattern happening, okay? Super important. Yeah, it's cliche, but it's effective. It gets the job done. Let's go ahead and hear that. Okay, so there you have it. Piccolos, flutes, clarinets. Just about everybody's playing. Okay, even the contrabassoons are playing down below. You also have at the very beginning you have a koro, which is a West African instrument. It's kind of like it's like a plucky kind of instrument. So that's doing that. I really love the way that sounds. We also have a fula flute. It's also a West African instrument that's hitting right here. And I just wanted you guys to hear that. All right, so moving on now, the brass, as I already showed you guys before, but I'll show you guys again what's happening at that section with the brass. So as you can see, I did at one point have the trombones playing the harmony, but I ended up switching it out because I didn't feel like it was necessary within the overall context of the mix and the orchestration and the arrangement. And so instead what I have is the horns carrying that melody really emphatically. The trumpets add on towards the latter section, towards the latter half of the melody. And then I have all the bass instruments playing that bass line. Simple, just carrying down, anchoring the harmony. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and play what's happening in the choir section. So the choir is really just holding on to that melody, so let's listen to that. Okay, there you go. Lots of reverb, makes it epic. All right, finally we have we have the strings, and then I'm going to show you the percussion side of things. So here are the strings. So we have a little bit of a combination, like what's going on in the woodwinds is also what's going on in these strings, okay? So now we get to the really important parts of this theme, and that is what I call the synths, but it's really just a synth pulse, a distorted guitar, and then the drums. And so let's go ahead and play that. So here is just the synth pulse by itself. So just something that really gives it a motor, and just, I don't know, within the mix, it just really makes it feel real oomph, real anthemic, okay? All right, so next we're gonna go ahead and listen to these guitars, these distorted guitars. Here's what they sound like. This is a patch from Opus. Just get straight down to it. It's from a Goliath library. Okay, so there you have it. Really awesome. And then finally we have the drums. I just love the drums right here. I'm going to play these drums by themselves, and I'm going to play them after with the percussion that follows with it, and you can see how they all really just go hand in hand together. So you hear a lot of reverb, a lot of punch to it as well. I did send less reverb to the hi-hats because that's very snappy, and I didn't want it to be all over the place, but I did leave quite a bit of reverb in the bass and the snare, which normally that doesn't usually happen with the bass especially, but I did leave it in there because I wanted to all feel within a big room, like almost like a stadium kind of sound. All right, so I'm going to leave that drum set on, and now I'm going to go ahead and play for you the untuned percussion right here. So there's that harmony, right, between orchestral instruments and drum band kind of style of things. And again, that's really motivated through the director's cue of just like trying to incorporate a little bit of some elements of that, Marvel Avengers kind of style where, he had Alvin Silvestri had a little bit of some drums in there. Okay, finally, I have this patch from Damage. Good old Damage gets the job done. I'm going to go ahead and play that, with everything that I just did so you guys can hear how all these drums come together and just really helps to make everything sound so good. Okay, here we go. Did you catch it? Right? It adds a little bit of oomph to that overall percussion. I'm going to go ahead and play that by itself just in case you might have not have been able to hear it. Okay, here it is right here. Just a little bit of air candy. And that's it, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and play everything again together for that section. All right, so there you have it. That is the end of the score breakdown for the film project. Next episode, we're going to be going over the actual end credits music, which is pretty much the entire box of theme in its entirety, which I can't wait to show you guys. So definitely stay tuned for that. All right, you guys, happy composing, directors, happy writing, happy filmmaking, everyone. Peace out.